fictions.
Dobar dan vam želim i dobrodošlicu na prvu Bookstanovu sesiju pod nazivom Granice i ograničenja, kao što i jeste centralni moto trećeg internacionalnog festivala književnosti Bookstan. Sesija će biti na engleskom jeziku i ukoliko je potrebno nekom na prijevod, može na našem infodesku da se posluži slušalicama. Granice i ograničenja je kao temu definisao naš ovogodišnji kurator GRATZ i velika nam je čast što je pristao da na taj način nastavi saradnju s nama. Naime, osim saradnje sa Bookstanom, gospodin Mak je dugogodišnji Bajbukov autor i zapravo jedan od najznačajnijih pisaca holandskih i evropskih i sigurno jedan od najboljih poznavatelja evropske istorije. On ovdje samim tim što je naš autor i što je dolazio ranije, nije samo u svojstvu gosta niti kuratora, prije da je u svojstvu domaćina. Osim Maka koji nam je friško stigao u Sarajevo, o granicama i ograničenjima će danas s nama govoriti gospodin WESTERMAN, koji je također odličan poznavatelj domaćih prilika, s obzirom da je svjedočio sa svojim kolegom padu Srebrenice i tekako je upoznat sa srebreničkom tragedijom i svim onim što su posljedice rata u Bosni i Hercegovini. On je pisac i novinar, a cijelom sesijom moderirat će gospodin Keulemans, koji je prvi put u Sarajevo došao još u vrijeme opsade 1994. godine na festivalu MES i na neki način u određenom smislu u Sarajevu ostao, kao što to nerijetko čine ljudi kada prvi put iz ko zna kojih okolnosti dođe u Sarajevo. On je inače putopisac i novinar. Bosansko-hercegovački predstavnik na sesiji je GRATZ, riječ je također o Bajbukovom autoru, književniku, ponekad i filmskom autoru, pravniku, ali široj javnosti nekako možda najpoznatijem po tome što je zastupnik u Federalnom parlamentu Bosne i Hercegovine. Nadam se ne dugo, ne nakon ovih posljednjih izbora, ali će itekako biti relevantan sagovornik na sve ono što su teme granica i ograničenja. Prije nego što našim uvaženim gostima dam riječ, zahvalit ću se ambasadi Kraljevine Nizozemske, koja nam je na raznorazne, pa i one vrlo konkretne i neophodne načine pomogla održavanje ovog festivala, ali također se zahvaljujem i Holandskom i Belgijskom fondu za književnost. Pozivam vas da budete s nama u 18 sati kada predstavljamo iranske autore, potom u 19:30 isto na Akademiji likovnih umjetnosti upriličit ćemo promociju nove knjige Faruka Šekića. U 21 sat naš kurator ima svoje književno predstavljanje kojim će moderirati John Freeman, jedan od suosnivača Bookstana. Nakon toga se družimo neformalno ispred Akademije, ako nas vrijeme posluži, ukoliko ne, onda će naš koktel biti u prostorijama Akademije. Hvala vam mnogo na dolasku. Jedan, dva, tri, pet.
Dame i gospodo, dobar dan. First time I came here was 1994. My name is Keulemans. I've been here regularly ever since, and I still don't speak the language. So Christina, I'm sure your introduction is beautiful. Thank you very much. Is there anybody here who has trouble understanding English? Good. So we're going to do this conversation in English. It is very, very exciting to be part of Bookstan this year. Thanks to GEERT, thanks to the Dutch Embassy and to the Dutch Literature Foundation, represented here by Mireille Berman. A number of excellent Dutch and Belgian authors were able to join the festival this year. GEERT Mak here, one of our most prominent, best known, important non-fiction writers whose work is being translated into Bosnian as we speak. I expect the first copies of the new translations to arrive during this session. He was invited to curate part of this program involving the Dutch and Flemish authors. He did so under the theme of borders and boundaries, and for this occasion, he gave us the title, The Balkan Route, and this is what we'll talk about between now and 6 o'clock. We'll be joined by Frank Westerman and Dennis GRATZ. I'll introduce all of you more extensively in a minute. But first, maybe, Geert, can you elaborate a little bit on your choice for this title and theme, The Balkan Route?
We invented this title, I think, about a year ago. And of course, at that time already, immigration was a big discussion in Europe. But not only immigration, it was and is also about borders and about how far the European project will go. So the Balkan Route is part about the immigrants. But it is also about how we in Europe will behave to each other in the future. What will we do with our borders? How will we live separately and together? What kind of identity Europe will have in the next future and in the further future? The Balkan Route is also something totally else. It is about the influences of, for instance, Russia and China on the European project. And it is more and more actual than let's say, a year ago, because the whole Atlantic road is built in disarray. And in this situation, you see all kinds of other powers coming up. We are really living in the middle of a change of history, a change of paradigmas even. So the Balkan Route is also about how vulnerable Europe is. And last thing, the Balkan Route can be also very inspiring. Sarajevo, and that was the reason it was for me an honor to help with this festival, is for me always very inspiring. Inspiring because it shows, even after everything that's happened, how you can live together again, how you can build up, perhaps not a new country, but a new city. And I think cities like Sarajevo, but also like dozens of other cities in Europe, will be very, very important in the next decades. Perhaps cities like Sarajevo and other cities show us how to survive. That's the reason for this title.
In your masterpiece in Europe, which I believe is also down in it's translated here,
Yes.
in Europe.
For sure. Yes.
So we should have it on the table soon. The book ends in Sarajevo. After a year of travel at the end of the 20th century, meeting all kinds of different people in all kinds of different places across Europe, connecting larger history to personal history, you end up here. Why? In the snow.
Of course. I wanted to go to Kosovo. It was coincidence. It was snowing. It was snowing like this. So I couldn't go further.
It snows.
It was at the end of December 1999, and the last days, because I wanted to end at the same moment. That was the Kosovo War. So I wanted to go to Pristina but I spent days in the airport here with all kinds of American soldiers waiting to go home. And I wanted to go to Christina, but it was impossible. So the book ended in the snow, and it was, it was also a good end. Just, and I left at the end with a car, complicated traveling to Split, but it was just a situation. And when I was writing the book, I thought, yes, good, just let it snow, good.
Now, before we go back to this Balkan route, here we are. Two parts of in Europe, part 1 and part 2 are here now in Bosnia as well. Before we go back to the Balkan route, I just want to, set the stage for this conversation. We're at a literature festival, at a writers festival. But the Balkan route, and when we're talking about borders and boundaries and migrants and refugees, up until this very moment here in Sarajevo, can you tell me, Geert, why writers are very often instinctively attracted to the stories of newcomers, of migrants, of migration, while societies in general often tend to be suspicious and fearful?
I think newcomers are always marginal people. They have to start a new society, and they have always had a complicated life. And I think good literature is always about, not about easy living. No, it is always, good literature has to show the complexity of life and the complexity of history too, of personal history, but also of the general history. So, as a journalist and a writer, I think immediately, yes, immigrants, honestly said, they have always a good story. And that is because they have really, it is also, perhaps I'm talking now from Western Europe. In Western Europe, we have lived after decades of peace and decades of great prosperity and so on and so on. But people are not used anymore to the tragedy of life and to the problems which people have sometimes in circumstances they have never created themselves. And I think every good writer is looking for these kind of things. So I think it is as an instinctively, you go to people who are somehow are not living so-called normal lives.
Okay, that's one part of my question. The other part of my question is about societies in general who are less curious about these stories.
I think that is the same reason, because often, and I see this problem also in the West, because there are a lot of reasons people are afraid of newcomers. Let me say that first. I think countries and people are less afraid of immigrants and newcomers when they are self-confident and when they are not afraid of the future. And also it has something to do perhaps with the tradition of newcomers. For instance, in my city, Amsterdam, people are they are not better or worse than other people, but the atmosphere is rather easygoing, because it was a city of immigrants already for centuries, like New York. And I can imagine that when you are living in a village somewhere in the mountains, you are never used to strangers. It is a different thing. But that's also a background. But I think in the West is what I said first also a problem now. People cannot connect themselves anymore, or less, let me say less, with people from other countries who are really in disarray. We will really have big problems. In the 50s, for instance, my own country, the Netherlands, was really a lot of immigrants and a lot of refugees, and they were, especially Hungarian refugees, they were embraced almost, because the people were just out of the Second World War and knew very well in that time, that generation still, how it was to be poor, how it was to be living, wandering around and so on. So there was still a kind of common feeling, and I think that is still there, but it is less. It is less because we became richer and richer, and I think also more egocentric. I think.
Okay, let's, from this wider view, the European view, let's move to you, Dennis GRATZ. You're a lawyer based here. You're a member of Federal Parliament for Naša Stranka, let's say we call social liberal party, which is quite strong here in the city. Tell us very briefly, to begin with, why the Balkan Route today, right now, 2018, in Sarajevo, is a thing.
Well, thank you very much for the invitation, and all the organizers for having the privilege to talk to you guys today about this very important topic. Well, frankly, the reason why the Balkan Route exists is in correlation to all the problems that Bosnia and Herzegovina faces as a state, and that is that the country is not in control of its borders. So I'm speaking, or I'm observing this from the point of view of someone who should be in charge of managing the inflow of refugees from anywhere. And currently, unfortunately, we are facing two problems. First of all, we are not in control in the processes. We still are estimating how many people have actually arrived in the country.
Just to clarify, in 2015, during the surge of refugees coming mainly from Syria and elsewhere, they somehow moved by Bosnia. But suddenly this year there's a huge increase of refugees coming through Albania, Montenegro, Bosnia on the way to Croatia, at least on the way to the EU. So now suddenly you have some 5,000 people here in this country.
Yes. Yeah, well, exactly as you said, 2015, when the world was kind of shocked by the wave that was foreseeable, at least considering the ignorance and the lack of activity related to what was going on in the world, especially in Syria and Iraq and in Afghanistan. 2015, the world sort of reacted accordingly to what was going on, and but we did not get the message. Yes, in Bosnia and Herzegovina. So once the curtain was, so to speak, established on preventing the refugees from entering the space of Europe and the EU, and especially after the agreements with Turkey on keeping the refugees at bay, you know, on the Asian continent, they found a way to Bosnia. And first of all, we weren't considered because who would want to end up in Bosnia, considering the infrastructure and all that. But now, because of our porous borders, because of our inability to deal with the problem, the refugees are here, and the big obstacle is that we don't really know, we don't have a plan what to do with the refugees. We have limited capacities, logistical capacities for dealing with it, but the more serious problem is our ignorance in terms of communicating the problem to the public. There are no refugees on the media on the level that, you know, you have people in the streets at the railway station, or there used to be people at the railway station, but you don't have the corresponding information activity to the public, why and what should we do about the people.
Okay.
Which is there.
You're speaking now as a responsible politician, talking about a very, very hot current situation that didn't have in mind a year ago when you thought about this title, but the Balkan Route has gained new content again today. Yeah? Let's get back to the current situation a bit later, because I want to use all of your wider intellectual gifts as well. To begin with you, Dennis, you're a lawyer, you're a parliament member right now. 25 years ago, you were a kid who escaped the country during the war with your parents to Germany, where you spent a number of years before returning. If you look today at Germany, Geert Mak was describing how Europe is in disarray because the arrival of newcomers tips the balance in all kinds of values of society. Germany this week had to take a very tough decision on refugees in order not to have a government crisis. How do you look at Germany, the Germany of your youth and the Germany of today in dealing with refugees?
Well, to be honest, it has changed a lot, but I think in a positive way. First of all, the politics or the policy of Chancellor Merkel to actually accept a large amounts of refugees was welcomed everywhere in the world. It was a unique act of humanity, in my opinion. And this is something that I remember as a refugee in the 90s. We were, well, not necessarily welcomed, but we were provided with everything that we needed, including schooling, roof, nutrition, whatnot. Not coming from a war, we forgot, in my opinion, that we were the privileged refugees because we were white. And I think this is something that has in a way, provoked, because right now in Germany, the public sort of narrative is, well, how are we going to integrate? And look, the right is growing stronger because we let so many refugees in. First of all, Germany managed logistically and in any other way to deal with refugees. And I don't think that this right activism was not existent before the refugees. It was always there. What I like about the things that are going on now is that they provoked the contrast and the conflict in society that has always been there. And yes, it exposed it, and it actually pushed for sort of dealing with how are we going to integrate large amounts of people who are not perceived as being a part of our cultural sort of identity. Whereas, we were white people from the Balkans who assimilated very easily, also because, at that point, you didn't have these means of information, you didn't have the world as globalized as now, so they could deal easier with us. And most importantly, we were only a couple of 100,000, whereas we're now speaking of 1.5 million people.
This is a beautiful observation in hindsight, because back then you would never call yourself privileged, obviously, because you were in trouble. But yeah, now you can use that word at least to say you were white, you were visually able to make.
Because I feel sorry for our own ignorance that we have actually forgotten our very, very past, what we were, and how we now react to the terrible things that are going on in the world. I feel like we have sort of lost the empathy that we always requested and demanded from the rest of the world. Okay. How can you forget Sarajevo? How can you ignore what is going on here? And so on and so on. But we are right now very much behaving like that in our world, which is shameful. And this is why I think, we forgot that we were that privileged, and we forgot all the hospitality that was provided to us.
And as you said, a crisis like this, or at least the arrival of a fair number of newcomers, can expose the the conflicts, the tensions within society that are underneath the surface. It happens in Germany, it happens here, it happens, God knows, in Holland as well. We'll get back to your point about empathy. I think it's a very important point. And Frank Westerman might say a few things about that as well. Frank, for us in the Netherlands, during the war, you were the reporter I was reading. You were writing reports for the daily newspapers. In Holland, you were in Srebrenica, before the fall, after the fall. You published about the tragedy, and later on you went back to that, 20 years later you went back to that to uncover what had been covered in the Netherlands concerning the role of Dutchbat and the Dutch government and the international command line. But I want to ask you, to begin with, last year you were in Mostar. You made a documentary about the bridge. You were struck, obviously, by the beauty of the bridge, but also by the divide which still exists in the city of Mostar. When you come back to this country, having seen it in its darkest hour, do you see the power of resilience and resurrection at work, or do you see the legacy of destruction at work?
Oh, that's, let me start just from the experience, driving from the airport to central town.
Just now,
a few hours ago, the last time before, I think I drove that same stretch. It was still called Snipers Avenue, and I was sitting in an AFP press armored vehicle in the back. So things have changed. We even had a traffic jam. So from the view, but I see the mountains, and I see the time I spent over there with the Bosnian Serbs, Radovan Karadzic and Pale and Sonja Karadzic, and waiting for what? Waiting for NATO, waiting for whatever. I can vividly recall these scenes. Also with a lot of snow, by the way. But the thing is that from empathy, I think as a reporter, I'm going to use this word, but only in this context, as a newcomer to the scene. I'm not saying I'm a refugee. I was a newcomer to the scene. One can only be bewildered and curious, and you want to know how the world looks like from the other side. Doesn't matter which trench you are in, or if you are meeting Nasser Oric in Srebrenica, you want to try to understand the world from the other side, from the other point of view. And there are so many things that are, I was young, I was 27 when I came here. I had to change flats, apartments, with a jazz musician. No, he was the host to a radio talk show in Belgrade with jazz music. And he was at a festival in Holland, like a jazz festival. And he decided not to turn back, to return to Yugoslavia because he didn't want to be drafted and fight. So I started living in Ho Chi Minhova, New Belgrade, in the 14th floor in Ho Chi Minh Street. So everything was new. And I tried to look, to not take sides. I thought, like, I'm 27, I can only be a good reporter if I don't take sides. Which was very naive, because you're dragged into it. And to make sure, a long story short, I had my own refugee at a certain point of time in Ho Chi Minh.
street. It was Pedja, and Pedja actually ran away. He was also a deserter, but he ran away in the wrong direction. He went to Belgrade. He was a Bosnian Serb. He was supposed to shoot at you in Sarajevo, and his parents are from Sarajevo. I later visited them in the war. So Pedja, but this is important for the I think for the essence of how complicated things are. Pedja went to the UNHCR office in Belgrade, trying to find protection because he was afraid that Milosevic would send him back to Bosnian Serb territory. I got a call, do you want to interview this guy we have here? And I did so, and the same evening, he rang my bell. I opened the door, it was Pedja with a sports top, bag with his belongings, asking if he could stay for one night. Well, he stayed for 3 months, and what I didn't know is that he was pressured already by the military police in Belgrade, and they knew he was staying at my place, and they would not touch him unless he would report every Monday on what these foreign journalists were doing. So my refugee turned out to be a spy. Well, the whole point I'm trying to say is that there is no black and white, there is no good and evil, and there is good and evil, but it's not as clear, the divisions are not as clear as you wish them to be.
Okay, evil is evil when you encounter evil. You've seen evil at its worst.
But was he a refugee or a spy? I still don't know.
Sure. But and it's actually nice to hear that you were famous in other circles than the literature readers, but also in the offices of the police as well. But let's fast forward then 2 decades and your recent return to Mostar.
Yes.
In your documentary, again, you tried not to be black and white. You tried to interview witnesses from all sides. In this case, from both sides.
Well, the concept was very, I think the concept was very simple, and that Una, who's here, was our interpreter, and we had 2 presenters, journalists, starting on the bridge of Mostar, and we said, we have one question, and we're going to test the question. You go at the, let's say, that Bosnian, Bosnian Muslim side, and I go to the Bosnian-Croatian side, Catholic side, if you want. And we tested the same question, and the question was basically, many people here in the Balkans say, every generation has its own war. And this is not a thing that I invented. I've heard it so many times, and I think you are familiar with the saying that, well, we cannot escape a war every generation. So it's about time, isn't it, to start another one, because you're now 25 years on. So do you, at this side of the bridge, think you have a chance to escape it? Or is it just destiny and we will start soon, because it's about time to destroy the bridge again, or whatever? And so we tested the same question, and I was kind of pessimistic. Of course, we had a lot of fun, we got drunk, we laughed, we always do when we're here, of course, it's the Balkans. You cry together, you laugh together, it's really intense. But it's, at the same time, the divisions were very sharp. I mean, it's not right the river, the Neretva, but it's of course a little bit beyond. But you see the minarets and the Catholic bell towers, and even if you try to look a little bit beyond the symbols,